Okay, let's try this and make it work. Hang on, the iPad needs to be set at a better angle. Here we go. I don't know if you can tell. I've been losing some weight recently, but it's not the kind of weight I want to lose. Apparently, I'm losing muscle mass instead of body fat, and I don't know how to feel about that. But the gym here is 24/7, so I should start doing something about that. Oh, by the way, this is the Mastodon Emperor Sand shirt that I've referenced before in bulletins. I got it at the concert I went to 2 years ago, and I'm a little disappointed that it's not the actual touring shirt, so you can't see the dates on the back. But it was the coolest looking one out of all the ones they had that, didn't have the skull logo. I'm trying to read a short story for y'all tonight, but Wicked thinks every time I sit down it's playtime. The life of a puppy. It's so simple, so small, no responsibilities. Dude, if you keep doing me like this, I won't have any breath left. Let's talk through my video. Go play with Shirley. Yes, very good. Lie down. Alright, so, anyways, I can sit now. Clamcat in particular has been very excited for me to read this story. I need to catch my breath a little bit, sorry, moving around a lot. Why is the name Joyce Carol Oates spelled wrong? This comes from North Dakota State University. Sorry, y'all. Very awkward tonight. But you all can watch me anyway. It is what it is. Alright, so let's get into it now. Where are you going? Where have you been? By Joyce Carol Oates. She wrote it for Bob Dylan. I'm reading this for Clamcat. Her name was Connie. She was 15, and she had a quick, nervous, giggling habit of craning her neck to glance into mirrors or checking other people's faces to make sure her own was all right. Her mother, who noticed everything and knew everything, and who hadn't much reason any longer to look at her own face, always scolded Connie about it. "Stop gawking at yourself. Who are you? You think you're so pretty?" she would say. Connie would raise her eyebrows at these familiar old complaints and look right through her mother into a shadowy vision of herself as she was right at that moment. She knew she was pretty, and that was everything. Her mother had been pretty once too, if you could believe those old snapshots in the album. But now her looks were gone, and that was why she was always after Connie. "Why don't you keep your room clean like your sister? How have you got your hair fixed? What the hell stinks? Hairspray? You don't see your sister using that junk." Her sister June was 24 and still lived at home. She was a secretary in the high school Connie attended, and if that wasn't bad enough, with her in the same building, she was so plain and chunky and steady that Connie had to hear her praised all the time by her mother and her mother's sisters. June did this, June did that. She saved money and helped clean the house and cooked, and Connie couldn't do a thing. Her mind was all filled with trashy daydreams. Their father was away at work most of the time. Wicket! Their father was away at work most of the time, and when he came home, he wanted supper and he read the newspaper at supper, and after supper, he went to bed. Oh, hi, Darby. He didn't bother talking much to them, but around his bent head, Connie's mother kept picking at her until Connie wished her mother was dead, and she herself was dead, and it was all over. She makes me want to throw up sometimes, she complained to her friends. She had a high, breathless, amused voice that made everything she said sound a little forced, whether it was sincere or not. Oh, hold on a second. I gotta step off screen. Okay, I'm back. I don't know why, but I'm very congested today. Fucking allergies. Yeah, puff that essential oil. There was one good thing. June went places with girlfriends of hers. Girls who were just as plain and steady as she, and so when Connie wanted to do that, her mother had no objections. The father of Connie's best girlfriend drove the girls the 3 miles to town and left them at a shopping plaza so they could walk through the stores or go to a movie, and when he came to pick them up again at 11, he never bothered to ask what they had done. They must have been familiar sights, walking around the shopping plaza in their shorts and flat ballerina slippers that always scuffed the sidewalk, with charm bracelets jingling on their thin wrists. They would lean together to whisper and laugh secretly if someone passed who amused or interested them. Connie had long, dark blonde hair that drew anyone's eye to it, and she wore part of it pulled up on her head and puffed out, and the rest of it she let fall down her back. She wore a pullover jersey blouse that looked one way when she was at home and another way when she was away from home. Everything about her had 2 sides to it, one for home and one for anywhere that was not home. Her walk, which could be childlike and bobbing, or languid enough to make anyone think she was hearing music in her head. Her mouth, which was pale and smirking most of the time, but bright and pink on these evenings out. Her laugh, which was cynical and drawling at home. Ha ha! Very funny, but high-pitched and nervous anywhere else, like the jingling of the charms on her bracelet. I hate allergy season. For me, allergy season is all year long. What? What do you guys, what? Oh, Shirley, someone do you a spook? Okay, good. Sometimes they did go shopping or to a movie. Sometimes they did go shopping or to a movie, but sometimes they went across the highway, ducking fast across the busy road, to a drive-in restaurant where older kids hung out. The restaurant was shaped like a big bottle though squatter than a real bottle, and on its cap was a revolving figure of a grinning boy holding a hamburger aloft. One night in midsummer they ran across, breathless with daring, and right away someone leaned out a car window invited them over. But it was just the boy from high school they didn't like. It made them feel good to be able to ignore him. They went up through the maze of parked and cruising cars to the bright lit, fly-infested restaurant, their faces pleased and expectant as if they were entering a sacred building that loomed up out of the night to give them what haven and blessing they yearned for. They sat at the counter and crossed their legs, ankles, their thin shoulders rigid with excitement, and listened to the music that made everything so good. The music was always in the background, like music at a church service. It was something to depend on. A boy named Eddie came in to talk with them. He sat backwards on his stool, turning himself jerkily around in semicircles, and then stopping and turning back again, and after a while he asked Connie if she would like something to eat. She said she would, and so she tapped her friend's arm on her way out. Her friend pulled her face up into a brave, droll look, and Connie said she would meet her at 11 across the way. "I just hate to leave her like that," Connie said earnestly. But the boy said that she wouldn't be alone for long. So they went out to his car, and on the way Connie couldn't help but let her eyes wander over the windshields and the faces all around her, her face gleaming with a joy that had nothing to do with Eddie or even this place. It might have been the music. She drew her shoulders up and sucked in her breath with the pure pleasure of being alive, and just at that moment she happened to glance at a face just a few feet from hers. It was a boy with shaggy black hair and a convertible jalopy painted gold. He stared at her, and then his lips widened into a grin. Connie slit her eyes at him and turned away, but she couldn't help glancing back, and there he was, still watching her. He wagged a finger and laughed and said, "Gonna get you, baby," and Connie turned away again without Eddie noticing anything. She spent 3 hours with him at the restaurant where they ate hamburgers and drank cokes and wax cups that were always sweating, and then down an alley a mile or so away when he left her off at 5 to 11, only the movie house was still open at the plaza. Her girlfriend was there, talking with a boy. When Connie came up, the two girls smiled at each other, and Connie said, "How was the movie?" And the girl said, "You should know." They rode off with the girl's father, sleepy and pleased, and Connie couldn't help but look back at the darkened shopping plaza, with its big empty parking lot and its signs that were faded and ghostly now, and over at the drive-in restaurant where cars were still circling tirelessly. She couldn't hear the music at this distance. Next morning, June had asked her how the movie was, and Connie said, "So-so." What? What? Which one do you want? Do you want this? Or do you want that? She and that girl and occasionally another girl went out several times a week, and the rest of the time Connie spent around the house. It was summer vacation, getting in her mother's way and thinking, dreaming about the boys she met. But all the boys fell back and dissolved into a single face. That was not even a face, but an idea, a feeling, mixed up with the urgent, insistent pounding of the music and even the humid night air of July. Can you see me now? Trying to get the best angle. You'd think after 2 weeks I'd be good at this. That should work. but all the boys fell back and dissolved into a single face that was not even a face but an idea, a feeling mixed up with the urgent, insistent pounding of the music and the humid night air of July. Connie's mother kept dragging her back to the daylight by finding things for her to do or saying suddenly, "What's this about the Pettinger girl?" And Connie would say nervously, "Oh, her. That dope." She always drew thick, clear lines between herself and such girls, and her mother was simple and kind enough to believe it. Her mother was so simple, Connie thought, that it was maybe cruel to fool her so much. Her mother went scuffling around the house in old bedroom slippers and complained over the telephone to one sister about the other. Then the other called up and the two of them complained about the third one. If June's name was mentioned, her mother's tone was approving, and if Connie's name was mentioned, it was disapproving. This did not really mean she disliked Connie, and actually Connie thought that her mother preferred her to June just because she was prettier, but the two of them kept up a pretense of exasperation, a sense that they were tugging and struggling over something of little value to either of them. Sometimes over coffee they were almost friends, but something would come up, some vexation that was like a fly buzzing suddenly around their heads, and their faces went hard with contempt. One Sunday, Connie got up at 11. None of them bothered with church, and washed her hair so that it could dry all day long in the sun. Her parents and sister were going to a barbecue at an aunt's house, and Connie said no. She wasn't interested, rolling her eyes to let her mother know just what she thought of it. "Stay home alone, then," her mother said sharply. Connie sat out back in a lawn chair and watched them drive away, her father quiet and bald, hunched around so that he could back the car out, her mother with a look that was still angry and not at all softened through the windshield. In the back seat, poor old June, all dressed up as if she didn't know what a barbecue was, with all the running, yelling kids and the flies. Connie sat with her eyes closed in the sun, dreaming and dazed with the warmth about her as if this were a kind of love, the caresses of love, and her mind slipped over onto thoughts of the boy she had been with the night before, and how nice he had been, how sweet it always was, not the way someone like June would suppose, but sweet, gentle, the way it was in movies and promised in songs. And when she opened her eyes, she hardly knew where she was. The backyard ran off into weeds and a fence-like line of trees, and behind it the sky was perfectly blue and still. The asbestos ranch house that was now 3 years old startled her. It looked small. She shook her head as if to get awake. It was too hot. She went inside the house and turned on the radio to drown out the quiet. She sat on the edge of her bed, barefoot, and listened for an hour and a half to a program called XYZ Sunday Jamboree. Record after record of hard, fast, shrieking songs she sang along with, interspersed by exclamations from Bobby King. "And look here, you girls at Napoleon's, son Charlie wants you to pay real close attention to this song coming up." And Connie paid close attention herself, bathed in a glow of slow-pulsed joy that seemed to rise mysteriously out of the music itself, and lay languidly about the airless little room. Record me for a change. And Connie paid close attention herself, bathed in a glow of slow-pulsed joy that seemed to rise mysteriously out of the music itself and lay languidly about the airless little room. breathed in it and breathed out with each gentle rise and fall of her chest. After a while, she heard a car coming up the drive. She sat up at once, startled because it couldn't be her father so soon. The gravel kept crunching all the way in from the road. The driveway was long, and Connie ran to the window. It was a car she didn't know. It was an open jalopy, painted a bright gold that caught the sunlight opaquely. Her heart began to pound, and her fingers snatched at her hair, checking it, and she whispered, "Christ! Christ!" wondering how bad she looked. The car came to a stop at the side door, and the horn sounded four short taps. 4 short taps, as if this were her signal, Connie knew. Wicket, what have I got to do to wear you out, my son? Whoops. Maybe not fling the fried egg toy into the wall. She went into the kitchen and approached the door slowly, then hung out the screen door, her bare toes curling down off the step. There were 2 boys in the car, and now she recognized the driver. He had shaggy, shabby black hair that looked crazy as a wig, and he was grinning at her. "I ain't late, am I?" he said. "Who the hell you think you are?" Connie said. "Told you I'd be out, didn't I? I don't even know who you are." She spoke sullenly, careful to show no interest or pleasure, and he spoke in a fast, bright monotone. Connie looked past him to the other boy, taking her time. He had fair brown hair with a lock that fell onto his forehead. His sideburns gave him a fierce, embarrassed look, but so far he hadn't even bothered to glance at her. Both boys wore sunglasses. The driver's glasses were metallic and mirrored everything in miniature. "You want to come for a ride?" he said. Connie smirked and let her hair fall loose over one shoulder. "Don't you like my car? New paint job," he said. "Hey, what? You're cute." She pretended to fidget, chasing flies away from the door. "Won't you believe me, or what?" he said. "Look, I don't even know who you are," Connie said in disgust. "Hey, Ellie's got a radio, see? Mine broke down." He lifted his friend's arm and showed her the little transistor radio the boy was holding, and now Connie began to hear the music. It was the same program that was playing inside the house. "Bobby King," she said. "I listen to him all the time. I think he's great." He's kind of great," Connie said reluctantly. "Listen, that guy's great. He knows where the action is." "Hello, cat. Do you want to say hello to the viewers, Isabella?" "Probably not. You don't like it when I hold you." "Meow." Connie blushed a little, because the glasses made it impossible for her to see just what this boy was looking at. She couldn't decide if she liked him or if he was just a jerk, and so she dawdled in the doorway and wouldn't come down or go back inside. He said, "What's all that stuff painted on your car?" "Can't you read it?" He opened the door very carefully, as if he were afraid it might fall off. He slid out just as carefully, ow, Wicket, planting his feet firmly on the ground, the tiny metallic world in his glasses slowing down like gelatin hardening, and in the midst of it Connie's bright green blouse. "You know, Wicket, I really wish you would find another way to entertain yourself." Get a load of my chair, y'all. In the midst of it, Connie's bright green blouse. "This here is my name, to begin with," he said. Arnold Friend was written in tar-like black letters on the side, with a drawing of a round, grinning face that reminded Connie of a pumpkin, except it wore sunglasses. "I want to introduce myself. I'm Arnold Friend, and that's my real name, and I'm going to be your friend, honey. Inside the car is Ellie Oscar. He's kind of shy." Ellie brought his transistor radio up to his shoulder and balanced it there. "Now, these numbers are a secret code, honey," Arnold Friend explained. He read off the numbers, 33, 19, and 17, and raised his eyebrows at her to see what she thought of that. But she didn't think much of it. The left rear fender had been smashed, and around it was written, on the gleaming gold background, "Done by crazy woman driver." Connie had to laugh at that. Arnold Friend was pleased at her laughter and looked up at her. "Around the other side's a lot more. You want to come and see them?" "No." "Why not?" "Why should I?" "Don't you want to see what's on the—" "Wicket! Leave the cat alone." "Don't you want to see what's on the car? Don't you want to go for a ride?" "I don't know." "Why not?" "I got things to do." "Like what?" "Things." He laughed as if she had said something funny. He slapped his thighs. He was standing in a strange way, leaning back against the car as if he were balancing himself. He wasn't tall, only an inch or so taller than she would be if she came down to him. Connie liked the way he was dressed, which was the way all of them dressed. Tight faded jeans stuffed into black scuffed boots, a belt that pulled his waist in and showed how lean he was, and a white pullover shirt that was a little soiled and showed the hard small muscles of his arms and shoulders. He looked as if he probably did hard work, lifting and carrying things. Even his neck looked muscular, and his face was a familiar face, somehow. The jaw and chin and cheeks slightly darkened because he hadn't shaved for a day or two, and the nose long and hawk-like, sniffing as if she were a treat he was going to gobble up, and it was all a joke. "Connie, you ain't telling the truth. This is your day set aside for a ride with me, and you know it," he said, still laughing. The way he straightened and recovered from his fit of laughing showed that it had all been fake. "How do you know what my name is?" she said suspiciously. "It's Connie." "Maybe, maybe not." "I know my Connie," he said, wagging his finger. Now she remembered him even better, back at the restaurant, and her cheeks warmed at the thought of how she had sucked in her breath just at the moment she passed him. But how she must have looked to him, and he had remembered her. "Ellie and I come out here especially for you," he said. "Ellie can sit in back. How about how about it?" "Where? Where what? Where are we going?" He looked at her. He took off the sunglasses, and she saw how pale the skin around his eyes was, like holes that were not in shadow but instead in light. His eyes were like chips of broken glass that catch the light in an amiable way. He smiled. It was as if the idea of going for a ride somewhere to some place was a new idea to him. "Just for a ride, Connie, sweetheart. I never said my name is Connie," she said. "But I know what it is. I know your name and all about you. Lots of things," Arnold Friend said. He had not moved yet, but stood still, leaning back against the side of his jalopy. "I took a special interest in you, such a pretty girl, and I found out all about you. Like, I know your parents and sister are gone somewheres, and I know where and how long they're going to be gone, and I know who you were with last night, and your best girlfriend's name is Betty, right?" He spoke in a simple, lilting voice, exactly as if he were reciting the words to a song. His smile assured her that everything was fine. In the car, Ellie turned up the volume on his radio and did not bother to look around at them. "Ellie can sit in the back seat," Arnold Friend said. "Meow." He indicated his friend with a casual jerk of his chin, as if Ellie did not count and she should not bother with him. "How'd you find out all that stuff?" Connie said. "Listen, Betty Schultz and Tony Fitch and Jimmy Pettinger and Nancy Pettinger," he said in a chant. "Raymond Stanley and Bob Hutter." "Do you know all these kids?" "I know everybody." "Look, you're kidding. You're not even from around here." "Sure, but how come we never saw you before?" "Sure you saw me before," he said. He looked down at his boots as if he were a little offended. "You just don't remember." "I guess I'd remember you," Connie said. "Yeah?" He looked up at this, beaming. He was pleased. He began to mark time with the music from Ellie's radio, tapping his fists lightly together. Connie looked away from his smile to the car, which was painted so bright it almost hurt her eyes to look at it. She looked at that name, Arnold Friend, and up at the front fender was an expression that was familiar. Man the flying saucers! It was an expression kids had used the year before, but didn't use this year. She looked at it for a while, as if the words meant something to her that she did not yet know. What are you thinking about, huh? Arnold Friend demanded. Not worried about your hair blowing around in the car, are you? No. Wicket. Bella, play nice. No. Think I maybe can't drive good? How do I know? See, Bella, he's doing the puppy bow. He just wants to make friends. You're a hard girl to handle. How come? He said. Don't you know I'm your friend? Didn't you see me put my sign in the air when you walked by? What sign? My sign. And he drew an X in the air. Hey! Leaning out toward her. They were maybe 10 feet apart. After this, his hand fell back to his side. The X was still in the air, almost visible. Connie let the screen door close and stood perfectly still inside it, listening to the music from her radio and the boys blend together. She stared at Arnold Friend. He stood there, so stiffly relaxed, pretending to be relaxed, with one hand idly on the door handle as if he were keeping himself up that way and had no intention of ever moving again. She recognized most things about him. The tight jeans that showed his thighs and buttocks, and Wicket! Leave the cat alone! And the greasy leather boots and the tight shirt, and even that slippery, friendly smile of his, that sleepy, dreamy smile that all the boys used to get across ideas they didn't want to put into words. She recognized all this, and also the sing-song way he talked, slightly mocking. Kidding, but serious and a little melancholy, and she recognized the way he tapped one fist against the other in homage to the perpetual music behind him. But all these things did not come together. And just people outside. You don't have to be sad about it, Shirley. It's not them. And now you don't care, do you? No, your attention is gone. Shirley, it's okay. It's not them. She said suddenly, Hey, how old are you? Whoops, say it, don't spray it. His smile faded. She could see then that he wasn't a kid. He was much older. 30, maybe more. At this knowledge, her heart began to pound faster. That's a crazy thing to ask. Can't you see I'm your age? Like hell you are. Or maybe a couple years older. I'm 18. 18? She said doubtfully. Oh, they are back. Ugh. He grinned to reassure her, and lines appeared at the corners of his mouth. His teeth were big and white. He grinned so broadly his eyes became slits, and she saw how thick the lashes were. Thick and black, as if painted with a black tar-like material. Then, abruptly, he seemed to become embarrassed and looked over his shoulder at Ellie. Him, he's crazy, he said. Ain't he a riot? He's a nut, a real character. Ellie was still listening to the music. His sunglasses told nothing about what he was thinking. He wore a bright orange shirt unbuttoned halfway to show his chest, which was a pale bluish chest, not muscular like Arnold Friend's. His shirt collar was turned up all the way around, and the very tips of the collar pointed out past his chin as if they were protecting him. He was pressing the transistor radio up against his ear and sat there in a kind of daze right in the sun. I think I should call it here. Shirley's flipping out because Ash and her mom are here and they're taking way too long to come in.